Hi, this is Brad with umptracker.com, and today I'm going to talk about umpire Adam Hamari. Okay, so let's start on the profile page and talk about what we can learn from here. Well, first of all, Adam Hamari is, based on our system, the ninth ranked umpire out of 89 total umpires in our list. Okay, and so if we look here, we can get a basic understanding of why that is. So in terms of total percent missed, he is ranked 11 out of 89, 8.34%. And he's pretty low ranked on each of these as well. In terms of favorable calls, this is just kind of like a fun thing where you can see if they're more friendly towards home or away. But what we use to monitor fairness of the umpire, we'll talk about more in detail down here. And then he is a pitcher-friendly umpire slightly, 26 out of 89. He's pretty close to neutral, and we'll discuss more about what that means shortly. Okay, so each one of these plots allows you to see where this umpire ranks amongst his peers in a particular category, this being total percent missed. And so you can see he's doing pretty good. Lower the better in this category. In terms of strikes, above average. Balls, well above average. Okay, he's about average in terms of average daily separation and favorable calls. So he calls about three more missed calls in favor of one team than the other on average game by game. But if you click on this runs tab, which is really the important thing because this takes into account the situation in which the missed calls were made, he's actually pretty good, well above average. So he calls a pretty fair game in that category. And distance, he is great, pretty much. What is that? Top six, something like that. So very good in this category, which means when he misses, he's not missing by much. And in terms of types, like we went over before, this is pitcher-friendly rating, and each umpire gets a score for this metric. And what it does, it takes into account the percentage of missed calls where they call strikes, and percentage of missed calls when they call balls, and then also it takes into account the distance in which they miss in each of those categories. So if you're an umpire that misses in favor of the pitcher often, more often than the average, and misses largely, so calls pitches way outside of the strike zone, then you would be considered the most pitcher-friendly umpire, which in this case was Bill Miller. Okay, but Adam Hamari, pretty close to neutral, considered pitcher-friendly. Okay, so if we want to look at his actual strike zone and see if we can find some unique characteristics, this is not exactly the most useful tool. The reason being is that this can be a little bit misleading because all of the green pitches, the called strikes, are on top of the red pitches, the balls. So really, the only thing this shows you is how far out of the zone he's willing to call a strike. Um, it's better to use the Zone 1 tool or Zone 2 tool to get an idea of what his strike zone actually looks like. Okay, so what we're looking at is an estimated called strike probability surface of the strike zone for Adam Hamari. Okay, and so you can click anywhere on this and it'll give you a nice summary. So estimated probability of around 0.57 or 57% chance. And then if you scroll down here, you can see how he compares to the rest of his peers. And so you can see he's much higher than average on this pitch right here. And so I know a little bit about this guy. It's kind of interesting. Whenever you switch to only left-handed batters, you see that the shape of this zone shifts kind of. It kind of just morphs a little bit, transforms. It goes up and away, or up and in to a left-handed batter, and down and away to a left-handed batter. Down and away is something that is very often seen, but this up and in shift is something that is very rare. And as you can see, he is um, number one in this category right here. So he has the greatest chance of any of the umpires calling this pitch a strike. And even more interestingly, if you switch to right, which most people have a much higher probability of calling that pitch a strike to a right-hander than a left-hander, you'll see that he actually has a lower probability of calling this pitch a strike to a right-hander than a left, which I would dare to say he is the only one. And in fact, he calls this inside pitch to left-handers. It doesn't matter, low, middle, high, much higher than the average. So his zone is it doesn't change much for left-handers, and in fact, he actually, I think, yeah, I mean, basically the same probability of calling that to a right-hander. So he doesn't change as much on this corner as most umpires do from left to right, which is pretty unusual. Um, so I would say that's probably the most unusual thing about Adam Hamari's zone overall. Ninth ranked umpire, um, pretty good zone. His zone doesn't change as much based on the situation as a lot of umpires that we'll see. Um, Overall, he calls a pretty consistent